welcome to the party. We're in week 3 of this. We're doing this all summer. It's going to be a lot of fun. At the end of the summer, we're going to throw a really big party up here for our services together. It's going to be a lot of fun. But first, I'd like you to turn to your groups now and talk about what your idea of the best party looks like. Go. All right. Some of your answers. What were some of your answers? Big ice cream cake. I like that one. Okay, so we're going with food. Okay.
No broken chair.
No broken chair. Okay. Well, that should be a given. Yeah. Okay. A chocolate fountain and Super Smash Bros. Tournaments. I would go. Who would go to that party? Yeah, everyone in this room would go to that party. I like that. Okay, let's do a couple more. Pool party, yes. Decorations, yes. Last one. A bounce house and a trampoline, but with water. I like it. Yeah. Okay. All right. Have you ever been to a party that you felt like you didn't fit in, like you were the one on the outs? Right. So, I'll be honest. My voice is a little scratchy this morning because I was at a party this weekend. My brother-in-law got married, so we went to Tennessee for a wedding. In fact, we got back last night, so I'm a little bit catching up a little bit mentally, and my throat hurts because we were having a lot of fun. But if you've ever been to a good party where, for instance, at my brother-in-law's party, at his wedding party, hey, I'm telling my story now. Shh. My turn. And we were there, and I knew nobody there except for my family. My brother-in-law, his now wife, and my wife's family. I knew them. I didn't know anybody else. So all their friends that they had come together, right? It was a lot of fun. But if you know anything about me, you know I can't dance. But I really try. And that's probably worse. So if you've seen the Jack Black Peaches video, where Jack Black is like that's how I dance, right? I just try to be really dramatic and funny because I can't really dance. It was fun. The dance party started at the end of the ceremony. You go to the reception, you eat the cake, and then you do the dances. And if you've never been to a wedding, there's the mother-son dance and the father-daughter dance, and it's really sweet, and everybody's crying, and then they crank up the music, and we all dance for 3 hours, and it's really exhausting, but a lot of fun. And so our boys were dressed up in little cute. They're 5, 3, and 1, and they were all matching in white shirts and bow ties, and it was cute. But I knew nobody there, so I was kind of with my drink on the outside, just kind of yeah. And to music I don't listen to, and people dancing in the middle, and I was on the outs. I'm not gonna lie. Eventually, Chelsea let me dance without acting like she was totally ashamed of me. So I was able to do my chainsaw. There's that song we listen to on the Pump and Beats playlist that plays up here every morning, and it's the Chainsaw by Family Force 5. You guys heard that song? Crank it like a chainsaw. That's my go-to dance move. And if that doesn't work, I do the lawnmower. Yeah. And yep. And I do weird things with my mouth when I try to dance. I'm yeah. And Chelsea will most of the time look at me and go, stop, and then go away. And so it's I'm just on the outs. And it's sad, but also kind of funny. So if you've ever been in a situation, though, where you're at a party, maybe it's a Smash Bros. Party, and you just are terrible at Nintendo, and whatever it is, you just feel kind of on the outs. Maybe you grab yourself a little plate of food, and you just kind of stand on the outside and people watch. Anybody been to those parties? It feels weird. It's not fun being the person on the out. Now, the wedding turned out to be a lot of fun. I only felt on the outs at first because I had to, get a little loosened up and warmed up to really, dance and be included with everybody. But it was a lot of fun. If you've ever been to a party where you are not enjoying it, but everybody else seems to be, or maybe there's an inside joke that you're not in on, it's tough. It always seems like there's the in group and the out group. You guys ever been, whether it's at school or in band or on practice or whatever it is, you're in a group of people, maybe forced to because you're scheduled, because of school or whatever it is, but there's definitely the in crowd and the out. There's those who fit in and those who just seem not to. And let me tell you something, that's been that way for pretty much all the time. Like there's always been people that feel that way. There's always been people who don't feel like they fit in. There's always been people who try to make others feel left out. And that's kind of relationships. That's people's insecurities playing out in real time, regardless of which group you fall into. And so I think we've all been in that situation before, but where in your life do you feel like you fit in the most? I want you to turn to the people next to you. Where in your life do you feel like you fit in the most? I'll give you guys like 60 seconds. Go. So we recognize that there are places in our life where we feel like we fit in, places we feel left out. But have you ever considered maybe you're the person that makes people feel left out? Like, there's two types of people, right? There's those who are really insecure about themselves, and so they feel like they have to put others down and guard their friends closely and not let anybody else in because of their insecurities. So there's those who have a calculated approach to intentionally making sure certain people stay out and certain people stay in. There's another type of person, maybe it's you introverts out there, who maybe you have resting mean face, and you don't mean to, but you're not the first person to go up and talk to somebody. Maybe it's a little bit of social anxiety. Maybe it's just like some other kinds of insecurities where you don't feel like you're good at talking with people. But whatever it is, you have your close group of friends, and maybe it's out of fear. You don't reach out to anybody else. So unintentionally, others might feel left out by you, not because you're trying to, but just because you don't really take the extra effort to go and bring people in. You just kind of are comfortable where you're at. And so maybe you're the person that is making people feel left out. That's a possibility as well. So now I want you to turn to each other. What's the reason? I want you to think, put yourself in other people's shoes. What's the reason someone may feel like they're left out by others? We talked through kind of, now that you put yourself in kind of other people's shoes and kind of thought through, okay, what are some reasons people might feel left out? The thing is, the kind of party that we're talking about in this whole series, the kind of party that Jesus invites us all to, is the kind where nobody is supposed to be left out. Okay? So, just for review, let's review what we're talking about when we're talking about a party. A party is any effort to celebrate, serve, or enjoy others in a way that adds value to life. Remember this? Those of you who've been here, okay? Those of you who haven't, that's what we're calling a party. And a party starter is being someone who tries to make that happen however they can. We talked about how Jesus came to bring us an abundant life to the fullest, a life full of hope, a life full of peace, regardless of what is going on in our lives. And it's us, those who follow Jesus, we are the party starters. We get to invite people in on that abundant life. We get to bring people into the party. Jesus tells parables about it, and I'm sure we'll get to that later in this series. But the invitation does not exclude anybody, right? That means if we want to be party starters, we have to be the kind of people that see everybody as somebody worthy of being a part of God's party. Think church. Think your friend groups at school. Think when you have other Christians around, or maybe you don't have any Christian people of influence around in your life, in your everyday life. How can you find people that are like-minded Christians following Jesus and bring other people strategically into your party, into your friend group, into what you're doing? It doesn't have to be big. It can be stuff that you're already doing, but you just invite people along for the ride. So, but think about this question together. I'll give you 60 more seconds. What makes it challenging to treat everyone as if they fit in with God? We're going to transition a little bit into kind of what examples the Bible has to show us about this very idea of being included in the party, excluding others, and what it means like to really be on the outs or on the ins. We're going to look at how Jesus responded, how Jesus actually played this out in real life. Because I think the best example we can look to for how to live out certain truths is to look to see how Jesus did it. And so we're going to talk about Jesus' disciple, Matthew. Now, for those of you who maybe already know, explain for those of us who maybe need some memory jogging, who was Matthew? before he followed Jesus. He was a tax collector. Do you know what that meant? Nobody liked him, especially who? Especially his fellow Jews, right? Because he was seen as someone who had turned his back on his people. He was somebody who went and allied himself with the enemy, the Roman Empire, and then started taxing God's people on behalf of their enemy. And overtaxing, because tax collectors were known for being selfish and just putting some in their own pocket. So people didn't like tax collectors, right? And so this is kind of where we pick up on the story. But Jesus, this is right before Jesus had, this is right when Jesus met Matthew, really. And Jesus eventually calls Matthew to follow him and to be his disciple, right? But when they meet and Jesus interacts with him, Matthew invites Jesus over for dinner. And Jesus accepts the invitation. Now you have to recognize, in that day and age, like think about your school. If somebody really nice that you're friends with maybe goes to hang out with like the bully at school, goes over to their house and is all friendly with them, does that make you uncomfortable? You're like, are you going to become a bully now? Like, what are you doing? Like, he's tormenting us. Why are you? This kind of feeling is accentuated by like 100 times back in this day and age, because they live in an honor-shame culture. And you literally are not supposed to associate yourself with these kinds of people, according to the religious leaders. And so Jesus kind of violates those social norms, and he goes over to this tax collector's house. And let's read what it says in Matthew chapter 9. Later, Matthew invited Jesus and his disciples to his home as dinner guests, along with many tax collectors and other disreputable sinners. Right? The people around the table with Jesus, they didn't look like Jesus. They didn't sound like Jesus. They didn't talk like Jesus. They definitely didn't act like Jesus. And so these weren't the type of people that you would think Jesus would be sharing a meal with. All right, so turn to your groups real quick. Does it surprise you to know that Jesus shared a meal with people who didn't really fit in with their culture? Why or why not? I told you that this was violating lots of social norms, right? The religious leaders, the Pharisees in particular, were not cool with this. They looked at Jesus' disciples and they're like, what is going on? And so this is actually what it says in the next verse. When the Pharisees saw this, Jesus and his disciples eating with the tax collectors, they asked his disciples, why does your teacher eat with such scum? That's pretty harsh, right? This is what the religious leaders thought, and this is honestly what, by and large, most Jews thought of the tax collectors. It's scum. Why would Jesus? And so they're like almost trying to shame Jesus' disciples by asking them, hey, that rabbi of yours, that teacher, what's he doing eating with all that scum, right? It makes me think of like the Empire in Star Wars talking about rebel scum, like, right? It's like they think they're so much better. And Jesus goes on to demonstrate to the Pharisees that they're not actually as high and mighty as they think they are. But maybe that's some stories for another time. But the Pharisees felt it was their job to keep those who are the sinners on the outside and protect the flock and keep those who are on the inside and not associating with those on the outside, right? And they took that up as their role, their duty. And so they were questioning Jesus and his group for not keeping those people on the outside. Here's what Jesus says in response to them. He says, when Jesus heard this, he said, healthy people don't need a doctor. Sick people do. Then he added, now go and learn the meaning of this scripture. I want you to show mercy, not offer sacrifices. For I have come to call not those who think they are righteous, but those who know that they are sinners. Right? That makes a lot of sense, right? When do you go to the doctor? Not when you're healthy. When you're sick. Right? So Jesus is basically saying, like, if I'm the teacher, if I'm a rabbi, if I'm the doctor, then I need to go to where the sick people are, those who need me. And Jesus is saying, you got it backwards. It's not your job to include or exclude people. It's your job to love people and share that blessing. You know that blessing passed down from Abraham? That you were going to be a blessed nation to be a blessing to others? You're not sharing it. This is what you're supposed to do. So Jesus was like calling them out at the same time. He's like, it's not the healthy who need a doctor, it's the sick. And so Jesus is with the sinners because they need saving, and they know it, right? And he calls back to this Old Testament verse. God would prefer mercy over sacrifice. This is the heart of God. This has always been the plan from the beginning. So the tax collectors, the sinners, they may have been considered on the outside because of their behavior, and to be real, their behavior was not great, right? Jesus isn't condoning their lifestyle. He's not saying that they're great saints, but he is saying they shouldn't be excluded. They should be invited in. Good news is it's not our job to judge what others' people's eternal destination is or what we think God thinks of them. God already has his idea of what he thinks of us, and he tells us in his word that each and every one of us are made in his image and are loved dearly by him, and Jesus died for everybody. It's up to us to get other people to believe that and to share that hope. So it's not our job to judge whether we should include somebody or not. It's our job to include people, bring people in, to build relationships with people. Jesus shows us that everybody has a seat at the table. Okay? Look around this room. When you guys usually meet in small groups, there's these little black chairs that you're sitting in now, like circled around those tables. There's the high stools. There's the little like color couches. There's these brown couches that are all mismatched. Like, we kind of have a conglomeration of all kinds of furniture in here, don't we? Right? There's all different kinds of seats for all different kinds of people. Right? There's a seat for everybody at Jesus' table. Not all of us look the same. Like these chairs you're all sitting in now, they're all uniform. There's these standard black, semi-comfortable chairs. Actually, if you were here like 7 years ago and you remember the hard metal chairs, these are far more comfortable than that. That's not the point. The point is they're all uniform and they're the same, right? But all people are not the same. People are different. The different kind of seating all around this room is probably more representative of the different kinds of people that are invited to the table. And there is a seat for everybody. There is a seat for everybody at the table. And a party starter knows that there's room for everybody at the table. So, how do we live this out? How do we invite people into our table of hope, of joy, of salvation from God? So, rather than deciding on who gets to be included and who doesn't, let's first start by inviting just somebody. Maybe there's somebody you've been thinking about as we've been talking about this message, somebody that you know could use a friend. Maybe somebody who you used to be friends with, but you're not anymore. I don't know. But who could use an invite from you? Maybe who have you been treating like they don't fit in? And maybe you need to go and make amends, right? Who may need an invitation to remember that they're in with Jesus no matter what? And secondly, and this could be the uncomfortable part for some of you, especially you introverts, go to someone else's party. AKA, go where you don't feel comfortable. Go and spend time with people, getting to know people. Now, I'm not saying become best buddies with people that like don't live the same kind of life as you. That, you know, Jesus didn't go and conform to the tax collectors, but he did go in their world, not becoming of their world, but going into their world in order to be a light to them. So who in your circles can you go to build relationships with, just to be a light, right? If you've ever had somebody that you don't know come up to you and tell you you're wrong and tell you like something you should change in your life, you're not going to listen to them, are you? You're going to be like, who are you? Get out of here. But if somebody that you know comes up to you and lovingly tries to tell you something like, hey, you got some food in your teeth, right? We all have that friend that will be honest with us and tell us the truth, right? When you have somebody that you trust, that's the key word, come up and tell you something, you're more likely to listen to them. If you want to have influence, if you want to be a light in people who don't have light, who haven't come to the table yet, you have to build a relationship with them. You have to be the kind of person everyone wants to be around. You got to be nice. You got to be kind. So go to somebody else's party. Take the step to get to know somebody new instead of just inviting the same people over and over again to your party. Maybe go and start to get to know other people. So Remember, a party starter knows that there's room for everybody at the table.